Hare Krishna, please take my Bolo obeisances, glories to Prabhupada Guru Maharaj. Thank you for joining. We'll continue our discussion from third canto, seventh chapter, Inquiries by Vidur. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam namaskrityam naram chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jaya udiraye nashtaprayeshu abhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavata uttam shloke bhaktir bhavatir naishtiki Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swamiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravane Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunavadi Pashachade Shatarane Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Mukham Karoti Vachanam Pangam Langati Girim Yat Kripatamaham Vande Shri Guru Deen Taranam Paramanandam Madhavam. Last week we had ended the sixth chapter, which was a description of how the Lord creates the universe, the whole process of creation, glancing on Pradhan, Prakriti, Mahatattva. So Vidur, in this chapter,
Prabhu, Hare Krishna, we could not see your face, Prabhu, fully.
oh, let me see if I can arrange. Okay. Thank you, Prabhu. So Vidur now he's hearing this close association between Krishna and the material world. So based on that, he asks a series of questions. Some of the questions will be answered right away, and some of the questions will be answered in subsequent chapters. So the first 7 verses are Vidur's first set of inquiries. Then from verse 8 to 14, Maitreya, he answers these questions. Then 8 verses after that, 15 to 22, Vidur, he shares his realizations, appreciation towards Maitreya. And then the rest of the chapter, the 16 verses 23 to 38, is a whole series of questions by Vidur, very similar to the questions asked by Maharaj Parikshit to Sukdev Goswami. And the chapter is concluded by Vidur once again glorifying Maitreya, declaring his confidence in Maitreya. So we did the first verse last time. We'll do it quickly again. It was the beginning of or setting the stage for Vidur to ask questions. And Prabhupada translates that he asked the questions in a pleasing manner. And Vishwanath Chakravarti comments that it is the word that is used as is iva. It's priyanyan iva, that as if in a pleasing manner. Not that Maitreya was being disrespectful, I'm sorry, not that Vidur was being disrespectful, but Vishwanath says that Maitreya could divine the the questions, the doubts in the mind of Vidur about the material contamination of the Lord, the possibility of that. And even though Vidur is asking in a pleasing way, Maitreya as a devotee is not really pleased by not displeased because he does answer it, but it's not the kind of question that evokes happiness in a devotee. So we'll start from the second verse, 372. Vidurvacha Brahman katam bhagavatas chinmatra shaya vikarinaha leelaya chapi yujyeran nirgunasya gunaha kriya. Sri Vidur said, O great Brahman, since the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the complete spiritual whole and is unchangeable, how is he connected with the material modes of nature and their activities? If this is his pastime, how do the activities of the unchangeable take place and exhibit without the modes of nature? So this is Vidur trying to understand that Krishna is so closely involved with the process of creation. So he will ask three questions to understand the various or get clarification about the what he perceives as the various aspects of the close association between Krishna and Maya. So here he's saying is that Krishna is completely spiritual whole and is unchangeable. But Maya is not. Maya is the possessor of gunas, which are fluid, which are constantly in flux. And Maya is the energy of Krishna. And there is no difference between the energy and the energetic. So if Maya has gunas and Maya belongs to Krishna, then Krishna should have gunas. So this is his doubt. And if Krishna creates the material universe by the use of Maya, and this is Vidur has also said that Krishna actually becomes the universe because the universe has no other source. So does that mean that Krishna has a form of Maya? Because after establishing that the universe is a form of the Lord and establishing that the universe is made of Maya, does that mean that the Lord has a form of Maya? And then Vidur says, how can that be? And then he asks that any activity is instigated by a desire. So there is a desire to make some change. And there is a desire for the results of that change. So Vidur is asking that Krishna is performing so many activities. So given the fact that activities are executed in the backdrop of change, this means that the subject also needs to change. And anything that changes by nature is material. So Krishna is performing so many activities. The nature of activities is that there is a desire for change and it affects change. So if you put the two together, one can understand that Krishna has the desire for change, and anything that changes is material. So does that make Krishna material? And then it is described that Krishna is full of the six opulences. So he has opulences like wealth and fame and renunciation and strength. But then all these qualities are material, because you see all these qualities in the material world. You see people who are famous and wealthy and renounced and strong. And then if Krishna is the original storehouse of all these opulences that are present in the material world, does that make Krishna material? So this particular question will be answered by Maitreya in verse 9. And if you read the purport, then Srila Prabhupada actually preempts Maitreya and begins to answer the question in the purport right away. We'll wait until verse 9, because Vidur is building a cadence through his questions, and Maitreya then he kind of, so it's almost like we'll see. There's a drum roll that comes, so don't want to give away the thunder. So we'll see how it plays out. Okay, so that was verse 2. Verse 3. Rabasya kamalchikridashantayah swatastriptasya cha katham nevritasya sadanyatah. Boys are enthusiastic to play with other boys or with various diversions because they are encouraged by desire. But there is no possibility of such desire for the Lord, because he is self-satisfied and detached from everything at all times. So Vidur is thinking that Maitreya may say that these are all Leelas. These are all Krishna is playing. And Vidur is preempting that question or that answer and saying that, okay, but boys also play. But when they play, there is a desire in them to have some fun, to prove themselves, maybe in a competition, maybe in playing they compete. I'm better than you. And then the second half of the verse, where he says there's no possibility of such desire for the Lord. Now, if Vidur believed that, he would not have said this. So if he really believed that the Lord has no material desires, he would not have asked these questions. So he's asking this question, or he's putting this statement at the end really as a question, that if there is no possibility of such desire in the Lord, and if he is self-satisfied, then why does he perform Leela? So even though he puts it more as a statement, but it needs to be read contextually as a question. Next verse 4. Ashrakshit Bhagavan Vishwam Gunamayatmamayaya Taya Samsthapayantyeta Bhuyaha Pratyapidishyati. By his self-sheltered potency of the three modes of material nature, the Lord has caused the creation of the universe. By her, he maintains the creation and conversely destroys it again and again. So this is a summation of the previous two questions. So he's basically summarizing it, that Krishna is creating through his Maya Shakti that is imbued with guna. He creates and he destroys again and again and again. How do we understand that he is disconnected and distinct? He is not changed by all the changes that happen through this process of repeated creation and destruction of the material world. Verse 5. Deshakalato yoshva avastata svatonyataha avilupata vabodatma sayujeta jaya katham. The pure soul is pure consciousness and is never out of consciousness, either due to circumstances, time, situations, dreams, or other causes. How then does he become engaged in nescience? So now Maitreya Vidur, he turns his focus to the jivas. So even though he seems to be asking about the jiva, but his question is still directed to the Lord. Because he says that the pure soul is pure consciousness and is never out of consciousness. So the point that he's making is that the jiva is qualitatively the same as Krishna. Now the jiva gets engaged in nescience. So if the jiva gets engaged in nescience and the jiva is like Krishna, does that mean that Krishna also gets engaged in nescience? So he talks about the knowledge of Krishna. He's saying that it should be independent of, he says three things. He says it should be independent of kalata, desha, avastha, time, place, and circumstance. But he says, I see that it's not true. Because while it should be independent of kalata, it is avilupta. So lupta means that it becomes extinct. So extinct is a function of time. Like we say, the dinosaurs are extinct. So they existed at some point, but now they don't because of the influence of time. And the analogy that he gives is just like lightning is affected by time. So it comes and it disappears as time progresses. Then deshata, place, he says it is impacted by anyatha. It is impacted by others. So the knowledge should be independent of who the person is associating with, the environment that the person is. But he's saying, I don't see that happen. Anyatha, it is affected by others, just like the pot is affected by its contents. And avasthatha is circumstances, which he says gets affected by swataha, by its own nature. Just like sleep makes one forgetful. So Prabhupada in this, in the purport, he once again reveals a glimpse of the answer that Maitreya will give. The fact that the jiva is both the jiva and the maya are both the energies of Krishna. So he says that one energy can overpower another energy. but can never overpower the energetic. So Prabhupada says that the Jiva potency or the Kshetragya Shakti of the Lord has the tendency to be overpowered by the external potency, avidya karma samgaya. And in this way, he is placed in the awkward circumstances of material existence. The living entity cannot be forgetful about his real identity unless influenced by the avidya potency, because the living potency is prone to the influence of the avidya potency. He can never equal the supreme potent. So this is an important point Srila Prabhupada makes, which will get expanded later on, that uh, the role of avidya, that because of the influence of the avidya potency, one energy of Krishna gets overpowered by another. And Maitreya will explain this in further details. Verse 6. Bhagwaneka evaish sarvakshetrasvavastitah amushyadur bhagavatam va klesho va karma bihi kutaha. The Lord, as the super soul, is situated in every living being's heart. Why then do the living entities' activities result in misfortune and misery? So again, this question, it looks like it's asked for the jiva, but it is actually asked for Krishna. So what Vidur is saying, that empirically we know that the jiva gets impacted by misfortune. Then we also know through the scriptures that the jiva is accompanied by the Lord as the super soul. So given the close association, two kinds of association is established. One, the qualitative association, that the jiva is qualitatively the same as Krishna in the previous verse. Now he's talking about the attention, the proximity association. So he's saying that you cannot say that Krishna is busy or he does not pay attention to the jiva. He's actually present right there. And he's using the words to indicate Krishna Swayam Bhagavan. So Krishna is not delegating it to anybody. He's present in close proximity with the jiva. Yet the jiva suffers. So does that mean that Krishna's powers are limited? Because he's allowing the jiva to suffer. So this is a question that is often asked in religious circles, that why do people suffer? It either means that the God is not good. So this is a general a question that is asked in theocracy, that does it mean that either God is not good, or does it mean that God is limited? Because if God was unlimited and good, then he would not allow any soul to suffer. But the fact that they're suffering either means that there is some malice in God and he wants them to suffer, or he's actually all good, but he's unable, he's helpless to prevent their suffering. So the paradigm demands that you give up one of the qualities of God, either him being all good or him being all powerful. And Vidur thousands of years ago is asking the same question. Srila Prabhupada, he he expands on this in his purport through analogies. So the question is that why does the jiva suffer durbhagatvam and kleshas if the Lord is residing personally with him? So Prabhupada explains through an analogy that a citizen of the state may be in miseries for want of sufficient supervision by the state authority. So one might say that the king is busy and he's negligent. That is why I'm suffering. But then if the king is personally residing with the citizen, how can you make that case? Then the second point Prabhupada makes is that if qualitatively the jiva is like Krishna, and thus his knowledge is pure, he can never be covered with nations. Especially when the source of all the knowledge is present right next to him. How then does Maya cover jiva? And the third point Prabhupada makes is towards the affection of the Lord. That if the Lord is the father and the protector, and if he is known as Bhutaprat, or the maintainer of all living entities, why is he allowing them to suffer? It should not be so. And Prabhupada says, but actually we see that it happens everywhere. So these are philosophically exciting questions, the kind of thing that would excite those who are wanting to discuss about the logical aspect of the Lord's existence. So I'll read one more verse and then we can stop for any discussion. Etasim me mano vidwan khidyate yagyan sankate tanna pranudu vibho kashmalam manasham mahat. O great and learned one, my mind is greatly illusioned by the distress of this nescience, and I therefore request you to clear it up. So Vidur is making a couple of points. He's saying that that those jivas that I was speaking about, they are not out there, standing right in front of you. He said, I am that jiva who is greatly illusioned by the distress. So he says that I am khidyate agyana, that I am troubled by ignorance and sankate. I am in distress. So Vishwanath Chakravarti says that the pronoun naha is in plural. Prabhupada translates it into singular, that my mind is greatly illusioned. But Vishwanath Chakravarti said that the plural is not to include Maitreya, saying that our mind is illusion, but to indicate that me and people like me. So Vidur is saying that the answers that you will give will benefit not only me, but other people, other conditioned souls also. And in order to, so Maitreya might say that you are saying that people are illusion. I'm also standing next to you. I'm also a conditioned jiva. So why are you asking me this question? So he's saying, no, you're not included in that collective me. Because what does he say? That you are vibhu, that you are great. or you're connected with the Lord. So because you are not covered, you should be able to help me. So Prabhupada says that such mental bewilderment, as represented here by Vidur, takes place for some living entities, but not for everyone. For if everyone were bewildered, there would be no possibility of a solution by higher personalities. So that distinction between Vidur and Maitreya. Vidur saying me and people like me, but not you, which is why I'm placing my questions before you. Okay, so stop here and see if there's any comments. Okay, if not, we'll continue with the 8th verse. Shri Sukhvacha Saitam Chodita Kshatra Tattva Jigyasuna Munihi Pratyaha Bhagavachitaha Samyaniva Gata Samyaha Gatasmayaha. Sukdev Goswami said, O king, Maitreya, being thus agitated by the inquisitive Vidur, at first seemed astonished. But then he replied to him without hesitation, since he was fully God conscious. So we see a certain dichotomy in the characterization of Maitreya. So he was astonished, Smayan, and he was Gatasmayan, Gatasmaya, not astonished. And Prabhupada says that externally he was astonished out of humility by showing ignorance. But internally he was not, since he knew the answers. And Prabhupada explains that, therefore, although as a devotee, he externally expressed surprise as if he did not know how to reply to those questions, he immediately became perfectly settled and properly replied to Vidur. Later on, he says that although a devotee may apparently express himself to be ignorant, he is full of knowledge in every intricate way. So Prabhupada mentions that, comments that Maitreya's astonishment was a sign of his humility. That sometimes devotees ask questions, like sometimes you're in the temple and somebody will ask a question that he thinks is a really way out question. That why do people suffer? And then the person, to encourage the other person or to humility, say, oh, this is a really nice question, wonderful question. And then of course the more senior devotee knows the answer, but the astonishment is to some extent for encouragement and also a sign of humility. Vishwanath says that the astonishment was also because of the contradictory nature of Vidur's questions. So contradictory to what? Not amongst themselves, but contradictory to the tattva. So he was astonished that a person of the stature of Vidur was asking these kinds of questions. He says that he was also astonished because they were actually difficult questions. But then Bhagavad Chitta. But then he took shelter of Krishna and then he got the answers. So externally he said, oh, these are very difficult questions to answer. But internally, as soon as he took shelter of Krishna, the answers were resolved. So the reason in either case is yasmin vigyate sarvam evam vigyatam bhavati. That anyone who is a devotee of the Lord knows about the Lord to some extent. And devotional service to the Lord makes him able to know everything by the grace of the Lord. So that was the situation of Maitreya. Next verse, 9. Maitreya vacha Shreyam Bhagavato Maya Yannayena Virudhyate Ishvarasya Vimuktasya Karpanyam Utabandhanam. Sri Maitreya said, certain conditioned souls put forward the theory that the Supreme Brahman or the personality of Godhead is overcome by illusion or Maya. And at the same time, they maintained that he is unconditioned. This is against all logic. So Maitreya, out of affection to Vidur, is not criticizing him directly, but in the way of etiquette, is generalizing it. So this is exactly what Vidur had said, and Maitreya is saying you're not the only one who says that. There are many people who actually put forward this theory that the influence of Maya on Krishna. And then he says that this is against all logic. So this is the answer to the first question of Vidur that was asked in verses 2, 3, and 4. That does Krishna get covered by Maya? Now, Maya is difficult to understand through logic, especially in terms of a relationship with Krishna. She belongs completely to Krishna. She rests completely on him. Yet, while Krishna is Chit, she is Achit. Maya has gunas. Krishna is without gunas. So how can they be so closely related? So Prabhupada and Vishwanath Chakravarti, they use analogies that come later on in the Bhagavatam of the relationship between the sun and the clouds. That by the energy of the sun, the clouds come and cover the sun. But the sun is not really covered. It is only from the perspective of the viewer. So when a person looks up, if he happens to be under the influence of the cloud, then the person will say, oh, the sun is covered. But another person who is not under the influence of the cloud will see the sun as it is. So the action of creation of the universe takes place by Maya, an energy of the Lord, but does not impact the Swarup of the Lord. So just like the cloud is created by the sun, but does not constitutionally change the sun. Now, the point to note over here is that Maitreya, he does not go into all this explanation. His answer is basically restating the question of Vidur and saying that this is against all logic. The further explanations are actually by the realizations of acharyas like Prabhupada and Vishwanath Chakravarti. And because both Maitreya and Vidur are exalted personalities, so the communication between them is crisp and cryptic at the same time. And Prabhupada quotes some famous verses, Bhagavad Gita 9:10, Maya Dakshena Prakrita Suyate Swacharachar, Aparyam Itvanyam, Prakritim Vidimi Param, Jiva Bhuta Mahabhatu. So the fact that Maya is the inferior energy of Krishna, Maya is working under the direction of Krishna. So this is essentially the answer that yes, Maya is the energy of Krishna, but that it is Krishna's energy, and the energy can never overpower the energetic. Heat is the energy of sun. Through heat, the cloud is created, but the cloud never overpower the sun. So, thus the doubt concerning the relationship between Lord and Maya has been resolved. Okay, verse 10. Yadarthena vinamushya pumshatma viprayaha pratiyat upadrashtuhu swashiras swashiraschedanaktikaha. The living entity is in distress regarding his self-identity. He has no factual background, like a man who dreams and sees his head cut off. So in two verses, 10 and 11, Maitreya Rishi will answer the next question of Vidur that he asked in verse 5, that how does the pure jiva get covered with nescience? So this verse explains the impact of Maya on the jiva. She makes the jiva think that he is ignorant, but factually can never take away the knowledge of the jiva. So Maitreya uses the analogy of a dream to explain this, that a person may dream that his head has been cut off. In that dreamlike state, he might experience fear and pain and lamentation. But in reality, his head is still intact. So this is the impact of Maya on the jiva, that she can never take away the swarup of the jiva, which is full of knowledge and bliss. But she makes the jiva forget about it. So there is no, so the term is used as Atma Vipraya, that there is no actual destruction of knowledge and bliss, which Maitreya says Arthena, which appears without cause or meaning, but simply out of ignorance. So extending the analogy, that what does a headless man need to do to get his head back in the dream analogy? He does not need to grow a new head. All that he needs to do is wake up. He wakes up and he sees, okay, my head is there. So for the jiva to be relieved of all this distress, avidya needs to be removed. The Atma Vipraya is always there. The knowledge and happiness is always there. So in the previous verse, Maitreya had said, Yad Nyayena Virudhyate. that this is against all logic, and referring to the Lord being influenced by Maya. I think this is against all logic. And this verse resolves the doubt about Jiva. So Maya does not have the ability to destroy the 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 uh, the knowledge of the Jiva, which is why Maitreya had said this is against all logic. So the logic is there in the Jiva. The logic is the ability to resolve this. What is the position of of Krishna? This is there intrinsically in the in the Jiva. And when the covering of Maya is removed, then that logic is also restored. The second aspect of the question was that if Krishna is never influenced by Maya, then why does the Jiva get affected? If the Paramatma is sitting next to the Jiva, why doesn't the Paramatma also get affected? And Prabhupada explains this with a very famous analogy of the sun and the sun rays. That one can manipulate the sun rays, but not the sun. The Jiva is minuscule and can get overpowered, but not the Lord. And why does not the Paramatma help? This answer will come later on. Okay, so we have verse 11. Yatha jale chandramasah kampadistat krato gunaha drishyate sannapi drashtur atmano natmano gunaha. As the moon reflected on water appears to the seer to tremble due to being associated with the quality of the water, so the self associated with matter appears to be qualified as matter. So based on the previous verse, one may question that if Maya is covering the Jiva, then it may remove qualities. Why is it adding new qualities? And to answer that implicit question, Maitreya, he uses another analogy of the moon being reflected on the water. And this analogy is understood in three ways, each an expansion on the previous way. So the factual analogy is that when the moon is reflected in water, then it appears to tremble because the nature of the water is unsteady. But the original moon is not changing. It is steady. Similarly, the swarup of the Jiva does not change. But because it is now seeing itself in the context of Maya, it acquires the nature of Maya. So these qualities are not intrinsic to it, but it is acquiring the qualities of Maya. So just like the moon, when it is reflected, is acquiring the qualities of water, the quality of being unsteady. Similarly, when the Jiva, it perceives itself through Maya, it is acquiring the qualities of Maya. So the word pratiyate means apparently and not actually. So, like the experience of having one's head cut off is is an apparent experience. It's not an actual experience. Extending this analogy, the moon may be considered to be Krishna, and the rays of the moon may be considered to be the jivas. So when the rays of the moon fall into water, they are compared to those who are bahirmukhi jivas. So those who are averse to Krishna. The moon in the sky with its halo, which is the connected jivas, is steady. The moon in the water trembles because the water has fallen into the rays have fallen into the water and thus acquired the qualities of water. Similarly, the jivas who have left the association of the Lord have now taken up the association of Maya and have acquired her nature. And then Prabhupada extends it further into making the point that the fact that the rays fall away from the Lord reflect to the fact that they're qualitatively the same but quantitatively separate. So he uses this to make the point that the jivas are eternally distinct from the Lord. If they were not, then they could not have gone away from him and fallen into water. So it's another tattva that he manifests over here. Okay, verse 12. Savanivritti dharmena vasudeva nukampaya bhagavad bhakti yogena tirodate shaneriha. But that misconception of self-identity can be diminished gradually by the mercy of the personality of Godhead Vasudeva through the process of devotional service to the Lord in the mode of detachment. So in 3 verses, 12, 13 and 14, Maitreya will answer the third question that Vidur asked in verse 6. That is Krishna limited in his ability to help the jivas? Now, there is a phrase that is used over here, and I wanted to open it up for discussion and get your views on it. So the word that is used over here is shanaher. That tirodhate shanaher. That is, misconception is diminished gradually. So without reading the purport, what is your sense of the implication of this word? Why is Maitreya? This is an important verse that becomes the basis of further explanations by Maitreya. So what is the purport? What is the meaning? Why does Maitreya say shaner? Slowly.
Because of the conditioning, Prabhu, conditioning of the jiva due to its long-standing association with the matter, his attachment. It takes time for the jiva to come, but the Lord is not limited. He can at once lift the jiva if he so desires, if he comes out of the attachment. But jiva's attachment causing him to make this process more gradual than quicker.
Right. Thank you. The excellent realization. Thank you. Any other thoughts?
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Just as in the Shastakam, the verse where it says that the analogy they use like a mirror through this is by the cleaning process of chanting the holy name. By the cleaning process that we get pure. It's not something instantaneous.
Right, right. So very good answers, and they go to the heart of the question. The conditioning of the jiva, the uh, the nature of his, how heavily the jiva is invested. And Shaner does not point to the limitation of the Lord, because Krishna is unlimited. So when somebody says that it will take me 20 days to do this job, then the person is putting certain restrictions on his ability or on the job, but essentially on the ability. This is a big job, and even though I'm expert, but it'll take me 20 days. Another person might say I'm more capable. It will take me only 10 days to do the job. So the Shaner over here actually is not a reflection on the Lord, but the Jiva. Then how quickly does he want to get rid of his conditioning? So Maitreya has very expertly shifted the focus from Krishna to Jiva. So Vidur was very expertly trying to shift the focus from Jiva to Krishna, saying that the fact that the Jiva is conditioned while it is closely associating with the Lord means that the Lord is limited. And Maitreya is saying that so he does not answer the question directly. He's saying that the Jiva can lose its ignorance and conditioning based on its own effort. So the Shaner is pointing to the fact that it is predicated on the effort of the Jiva, and more importantly, Maitreya is introducing the concept of sadhana Vaidhi Bhakti, because he says savai nivritti dharmena. So nivrit is material detachment, and the symptom of material detachment manifests at the stage of anartha nivritti. Because prior to anartha nivritti, we have anartha asakti, that we are attached to that which is of no value. When that attachment gets converted to detachment, that's what is anartha nivritti. So when we say bhakti is manifested in two processes: material detachment, spiritual attachment. Material detachment is there until the stage of anartha nivritti, because essentially that is what is holding us back. We are holding on to a pillar and saying that I have to go, I have to go, I have to go, but we keep holding on to the pillar. So Maitreya is saying that uh, the process is there. the the burden is on the jiva. So what is this process of nivritti dharmena? So he says Vasudeva anukampaya, the mercy of Krishna. What attracts the mercy of Krishna? Two things: nivritti dharmena, which is detachment, and bhagavad bhakti yogena, which is devotional service. So he's saying as the jiva practices these two things, nivritti dharmena and bhagavad bhakti yogena, then gradually the misconception of the self-identity will be diminished by Vasudeva Anukampaya. By Tesham eva Anukampartha Aham Ajnana Dantama. That Krishna will then destroy the darkness of ignorance in the heart. So actually, bhakti in any form is Vasudeva Anukampaya. But the transition of bhakti from Mishra or mixed bhakti to Shuddha bhakti is more so dependent on the mercy of Krishna. So Vidur might say that why doesn't Krishna, if bhakti is a function of Krishna's mercy, then why doesn't Krishna just give his mercy? Sometimes we have that discussion with people and amongst ourselves also, that why Krishna wants us to become devotees, why does he make us work so hard for it? Chant and follow the regulative principles and do so many things? Why doesn't he just give us bhakti? And the reason is that until there is nivritta dharmena, the anukampa cannot manifest. So until a person opens the eyes, the sun may be bright and brightest, no difference. Only when the person opens the eye, then the influence of the sun in terms of light will happen. So while there is mercy of Krishna at every stage, it begins to manifest more so after the stage of nivritti. And in Nectar of Devotion, we also study this, that until anartha nivritti, bhakti is more so by the effort of the devotee. It's like you're climbing up a hill. After anartha nivritti, the mercy of Krishna descends. And then it is like you're going down the hill. That the flow of bhakti will take you much quicker than perhaps you might even be prepared for. Because then the full flow of Krishna's mercy comes in here. So Maitreya is saying is, yes, that mercy will be there, but at least open your eyes. At least develop detachment to this material world. At least make an effort to become Maya Bahirmukta. Instead of being Krishna Bahirmukta, be a Maya Bahirmukta. That turn your face away from Maya. And he will develop this conception in the next verse. Yadendriya paramatha drashtatmani pareharo viliyante tada kleshaha samsuptasyeva kritashnashaha. When the senses are satisfied in the seer supersoul, the personality of Godhead, and merge in him, all miseries are vanquished as after a sound sleep. Now this verse, so the previous verse was talking about the advancements of bhakti to the stage of anartha nivritti. This verse is talking about anartha nivritti. And anartha nivritti is achieved through Gyan Mishra Bhakti. So the anarthas that were the cause of the suffering, because they are expunged, then there is a concomitant cessation of the material suffering, because the senses are reposed in the Lord. So Viliyante, Prabhupada translates it to that the senses get merged with the Lord. Vishwanath Chakravarti says they get fixed in the Lord. And Prabhupada extends that the merging is in the merging of interests. They are not negated, but the fact that the pleasures of Krishna becomes the pleasure of the jiva. This is the stage of anartha nivritti. So the object is given as drashtar atmani. So unto the seer, Paramatma, pare in the transcendence, Brahman, or Harau in the supreme personality of Godhead. So Maitreya says, regardless of the conception. So drashtar atmani. So drashtar atmani is one who sees the Atma. This is the another name for Paramatma. Or pare, that is separate from the material, which is Brahma, and Harau is Krishna. So one who has crossed the stage of anartha nivritti will get satisfaction from any one of them. And because the progress so far made is bhakti, that is mixed with gyan, one may also understand that the drashtar atmani is referring to the loving glances of Krishna. Pare refers to one who is beyond prakriti, and Harau refers to one who removes all suffering. So relating to Krishna as the remover of suffering is a symptom of a Gyan Mishra Bhakta. So Maitreya uses the analogy of sleep. He says, San Suptasya. And Prabhupada translates it as sufferings disappear after a deep sleep. So the understanding is that while a person is in deep sleep, there are no miseries. So he may have miseries while he is sleeping, but while the person, while he's awake, but when he's asleep, no miseries there. The second understanding is that when a person is in deep sleep, there's no tormenting dreams. So when the sleep is so deep, even dreams don't come. Third understanding is that after a deep sleep, a person wakes up fully nourished. And the fourth is that sleep is like ignorance and waking up is like becoming enlightened. So the first understanding that when a person is in sound sleep, there are no miseries, it points to the jiva realizing Brahman, Paramatma and Bhagwan as an anga of Gyan. So the deep sleep refers to material detachment. And for one who has achieved deep sleep, the suffering due to loss of wealth or diseases disappear. So this is Gyan Ashrit Nivritti. Then the second understanding was that there is no tormenting dream for a person in sound sleep. So material attachment is like tormenting dreams. And when the person receives the loving glances of the Lord, who is beyond the modes, he gets divested from all suffering and he experiences deep sleep without any tormenting dreams. Third understanding is that a person wakes up fully nourished after a deep sleep. So this is the rejuvenation that the sleep gives. So similarly, a materially invested person becomes exhausted by engaging his senses with their objects. But once these senses have been detached from the objects, which is called compared to deep sleep, and then he wakes up, which means that now he reposes his senses in the Lord. Then he is fully rejuvenated. And the fourth is that the sleep is like ignorance and waking up is like becoming enlightened, is the more conventional understanding of the analogy of sleep. That a person in deep sleep is unaware of his own position and what is going on. So sleep is compared to avidya, the cause of anarthas. And when the person is waking up, then that avidya is vanquished and he is able to relate to the Lord. So Maitreya essentially is talking about the re-establishment of the relationships with the Lord at the conclusion of the anartha nivritti. Okay, I'll do one more verse, or I'll do two more verses, and then we can have a discussion. Ashesha sanklesh samam vidate gunanuvad shravan murare kim va punastas charanarvinda parag sevaratirātmalabdha. Simply by chanting and hearing of the transcendental name, form, etc. of the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, one can achieve the cessation of unlimited miserable conditions. Therefore, what to speak of those who have attained attraction for serving the flavor of the dust of the Lord's lotus feet? So the first two lines of this verse, they refer to sadhana bhakti, the process of shravana and kirtan, the process of ashesha sanklesha samam vidyate guna anuvad shravanam murare. So this is the process of practicing bhakti with the senses, which is guna anuvad shravanam murare. And the result is ashesha sanklesha samam, that the cessation of unlimited suffering. So we have already established that the cause of the suffering is ashakti in anarthas. So anartha ashakti is the cause of unlimited suffering, and the cessation of unlimited suffering is anartha nivritti. So the first two lines of the verse, they talk about the progress of sadhana vaidhi bhakti all the way till anartha nivritti. Now the last two lines of the verse, charanavinda parag seva, they are talking about bhava bhakti, developing rati for charanavinda, the lotus feet of. So parag is the nectar. So the nectar of the service for the lotus feet of the Lord. So this is another way of. So what does it mean when you say that one is serving the lotus feet of the Lord? So what is there at the lotus feet of the Lord? The devotees. So when one develops this rati for this desire to serve the devotees of the Lord, that is an indication of progression to bhava bhakti. And then he says atma labdha. So atma labdha means that it does not rely on anything external. So unlike sadhana vaidhi bhakti, which relies on senses, relies on outside environment, we engage senses and objects to serve. Atma labdha is that it's spontaneous. So in the 12th verse, Maitreya had spoken about Gyan and Bhakti, Gyan Mishra Bhakti, as the process to remove the avidya, the misidentification of the self. Then in the previous verse 13, he had advanced that to Jnana Mishra Bhakti. in this verse, he states that between jnana and bhakti, bhakti is better for producing the destruction of ignorance. So the mature form of the destruction of ignorance is actually manifested by bhakti. Sadhana bhakti can destroy ignorance. But rati or bhav, which is the goal of sadhana bhakti, is more potent because it not only destroys avidya, but it also develops, it also causes the Lord to come under the control of the devotee. It actually engineers a personal relationship with the Lord. Prabhupada says that Maitreya now gives the final answer to all the questions of Vidur. Devotional service to the Lord is the ultimate means to mitigate all the miserable conditions of material existence. The path of knowledge or that of mystic gymnastics may be adopted as a means for the purpose, but unless mixed with bhakti or devotional service, they are unable to award the desired result. By practicing sadhana bhakti, one may gradually rise to the point of raga bhakti. And by practicing raga bhakti in loving transcendental service, one can even control the supreme powerful Lord. So this is not what Vidur had asked Maitreya. But Maitreya is giving a bonus answer. Vidur had simply asked that how can the jivas not be distressed? And Maitreya said that not only will I give you a methodology by which the jivas are not distressed, but let me tell you something by which they will be in ecstatic bliss. The process of anartha nivriti will destroy the suffering of the jivas, the miseries of the jiva. But then the process of serving the lotus feet of the Lord, the process of serving the devotees of the Lord will actually put the jivas in a position of supreme bliss, to the extent that even Krishna comes under their control. Okay, so I'll do one more verse and then we'll stop. It's just the end of the section. Vidurvacha sanchinaha samshayamaham tava shukta sena vibhu ubhayatra pi bhagavan manomi sampradhavati. Vidur said, O powerful sage, my Lord, all my doubts about the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the living entities have now been removed by your convincing words. My mind is now perfectly entering into them. So Vidur once again addresses Maitreya as Vibhu. So if you notice, if you remember, then when he had started asking the question, at that time again he had called him, he had addressed him as Vibhu, to indicate that while Vidur may be conditioned, Maitreya is not conditioned. And now he is reiterating that because you are not conditioned, you were able to give the answers. And he glorifies Maitreya as Bhagavan. That you are because you're advocating that which Krishna advocates, you are like you're powerful like him. So he says that your words are convincing words, Shukta. And then he says Asina. Asina is like a sword. So by the sword of his words, Maitreya has cut off the doubts, the sanchina samshaya in Vidur. And the result is that his mana sampradhavati, that his mind is perfectly entering uvayatrapi, both the Lord and the Jiva. So this means that he is now well established in Sambandha. So he understands the position of the Lord and he understands the position of the jiva, and he also understands how to establish that sambandha. So Maitreya has given him complete knowledge. He has given him the relationship. He has also explained to him how to establish it. And he has also given him a glimpse of prayojan, which is bliss. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada says, the Lord is the eternal predominator and that living entities are eternally predominated. Real knowledge of this relationship entails reviving the lost consciousness to the standard, and the process for such revival is devotional service to the Lord. By clearly understanding from authorities like the sage Maitreya, one becomes situated in real knowledge, and the disturbed mind can thus be fixed on the progressive path. So Prabhupada is emphasizing on Sambandha and Avidya. That the real knowledge is Krishna is the eternal predominator and Jiva is the eternally predominated. Sambandha. And the revival of that real knowledge, the process is devotional service. That is Avidya. So these are the two things that Maitreya has given to Vidur, which has now pacified Vidur. So just in terms of summary, Vidur has asked 3 questions. The first question was asked in verses 2 to 4, that does Krishna being intimately connected with the material modes of nature become material? And Maitreya answers in verse 9 that Maya is always under the control of Krishna and can therefore never influence Krishna. Second question is asked in verse 5. How does the pure Jiva get covered with Nisyans? Maitreya answers in verses 10 and 11 that because of avidya and because he is minute, the Jiva gets covered. However, he only gets covered. Maya cannot change the swarup of the Jiva. The third question asked in verse 6 is that is Krishna limited? He lives in the hearts of the Jivas, yet they experience misfortune. The answer to that is in verses 12, 13, and 14. That the Lord is always there to help the Jiva at all times by offering him the process of Bhakti. If the Jiva, with a little bit of endeavor, takes to the process of Bhakti, the Lord quickly comes and showers the mercy on the Jiva, thereby rescuing him. Okay, so I'll stop over here and see if you have any comments.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. I'm very inspired by this section here. How you explained the process of descending mercy. I never heard of it or ever saw it this way. I would like to understand. You said descending mercy begins from the point of anartha nivriti. There's anartha nivriti, nishta, then there's ruchi, asakti, bhava, etc. So it's like the Lord stretches his hand, to help us. Does that mean that from Shraddha, Sadhu Sangha, Bhajana Kriya, from that stage, can we say, we could refer to that as ascending mercy, that we have to be sort of struggling, I don't know if that's the right word, through sadhana bhakti and like that. And having said that, can we also explain, is it correct to say that from sadhana bhakti to anartha nivriti, the point of anartha nivriti, is that the turning point where sadhana changes into raganuga bhakti? I don't know if I explained it properly, but I just like to hear a little more about that.
Sure. Thank you, Prabhu. And I also share your sense of wonderment at this sets of verses. They also touch me deeply. So the initial process is that more of ascending effort. That when we are in the process of Shraddha, Sadhu Sang, Bhajana Kriya, Anartha Nivriti, the focus is more on our effort. Mercy is always there, but more focus on our effort, because ultimately it is us who is holding us back. So Krishna waits patiently for us to untie the knots. So that's why Anartha Nivriti, we say that the whole process of spirituality is detachment and attachment. Detachment is in our hand, attachment is in Krishna's hand. So while right from the beginning we chant Krishna's name, worship devotees, so these are the angas of Shuddha Bhakti, but we are actually doing it to help us develop material detachment. As Prabhupada would say, so that we get a glimpse of the higher taste, so that we lose taste for that which attracts us. Sadhana Bhakti actually continues all the way till Raga Bhakti. Raga Bhakti, Raghunag Bhakti is also a Sadhana Bhakti. It's not Vaidhi. So Vaidhi is by Vidhis and Raga is spontaneous, but nevertheless it is sadhana. It is by practice. And Raga Bhakti manifests at the stage of Nishta. So once we are nivritta of the anarthas, then we start practicing in the footsteps of a perfected devotee. It is while it is practice, it is more spontaneous. It's like you and I may go to the same class to study physics. I may dislike physics and you may like physics. So both of us are studying in the same class, the teacher is teaching, but because you like the subject, you're enjoying it and you're getting a lot. And I'm sitting next to you, I don't like the subject, but I'm still studying. I'm still writing the questions, still doing the answers. So that's the difference between Raghunag Bhakti and the Bhakti prior to that. Both of them are under external instructions, but in Raghunag Bhakti there is more spontaneous taste. And then when Raghunag Bhakti matures, then Bhava Bhakti appears. So Bhava Bhakti is when you become instead of following somebody, you become a practitioner. You are established in your relationship to Krishna. So Rupa Goswami says that as we proceed more and more on the cycle of bhakti, our dependence on the mercy of Krishna becomes more and more. For instance, Bhava Bhakti, the only way that it can appear is when Krishna's Chitta Shakti descends into us. There's nothing that we can ever do to get Bhava Bhakti. So when Krishna's Chitta Shakti, which is a combination of his knowing potency and his loving potency, when that descends, then Bhava appears. And when that descends more, then bhava becomes condensed into prema. But Rupa Goswami makes this point to emphasize that we are completely the receiver in this. That it's not that if we do austerities, or he says that even bhakti, even if you follow the rules and regulations of bhakti for lifetimes after lifetimes, you can't lay a claim to bhava bhakti, because it is at the mercy of Krishna. Now, of course, Krishna is more merciful than what you can expect, so he will give it. He will give it even sooner than we think we are qualified. But from a tattva perspective, he explains the fact that bhava, we are only the recipient of Krishna's mercy. And then, of course, he uses examples of people who were unqualified, who reached the stage of bhava bhakti just by the mercy of Krishna.
Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. As you both expressed, it's a wonderful class, and I really enjoyed the content. Somehow I felt this is more enjoyable than the creation and things like that. And I'm hoping that as we make progress in our devotion, even we enjoy the creation also. At this stage, I'm unable to really relish that part of the Bhagavatam, but this part is much more relishable. And I hope that disappears with the Anartha Nivritti program. And another thing I was thinking as you were talking to Paramatma Prabhu, the ascending process requires the association of devotees. They also pull us in the ascending process, and the descending process, not descending process, like the after the Anartha Nivritti, we go on to the Nishta and all those other stages, wonderful stages. There also we need association of devotees not to fall down. In the beginning, we need the association to rise up, and then after that, we need the association not to fall down. So I was thinking these things just as the conversation was going on. So I thought I would share that. I also have a question about self-realization. We were talking about the gradual, process of self-identity. And so, do we? So, how? What's our understanding about Brahmavadis, like those who Brahman realized? Have they attained self-realization? And if so, this is also by the process of the same process that the devotee attains. And if that is the case, then why they come up to the stage of Brahman and then they stop there and then they don't go further? So these are some of the things I wanted to ask. Please throw some.
Thank you, Prabhu. In terms of realization, when a person has reached the stage of Anartha Nivritti, he has reached the stage of Atmagyan. So, which is why it is said that one practices Jnana Mishra Bhakti. So the Jnana is the knowledge of the self. Because if you look at it, what is the root cause of all the anarthas? The root cause of the anarthas is that one is not clear about one's identity. Because I consider myself to be the body, I inherit all the nishayans of the body, the suffering, the fact that it is changing, that it will die. It's because of the lack of Atmagyan. At the stage of Anartha Nivritti, Atmagyan manifests completely. Now, what is lacking at that stage is Sambandhagyan. I know who I am, but I don't know who Krishna is. Now, the problem in explaining in stages is that it's never actually factual, because with Atma Gyan, for instance, take us for example, that we are practicing devotees, we are somewhere within Bhajana Kriya and Artha Nivritti. We have understanding of the soul, we have understanding of Krishna, we have understanding of Sambandha, Abhideya, Prayojan. But the dominant knowledge that we are working on right now is to be established in this notion that we are not the body and the soul. And once that is established, then the knowledge that is waiting, so Sambandha Gyan is waiting. It's like there is a room in which one person is inside and other person is outside waiting for the person to vacate the room. Sambandha Gyan is waiting there. And when Atma Gyan comes in, then Sambandha Gyan is quickly able to come in. Sambandha Gyan, because it involves the presence of Krishna, it also requires the mercy of Krishna, which is why we say that subsequent to Anartha Nivritti, the process is, so you have done all that you could do. You have understood you are not the body but the soul, and you have detached yourself from your material contamination. Now it is upon to Krishna to begin to reveal himself, because that's how Sambandh can be established. When you understand whom you are going to establish the relationship with. So that is why the aspect of the mercy of Krishna becomes stronger and stronger and stronger after that. The Brahmavadis, they take a detour. So when they reach the stage, now Prabhupada always makes this point that even the Brahmavadis have to have bhakti. Otherwise, even that knowledge of themselves as a soul and of Krishna as the Brahman, it will not manifest there. But their bhakti is not strong enough to attract the subsequent mercy of Krishna, which fructifies into the devotee's understanding of Sambandha. So the practitioner does not have the desire, so the mercy does not manifest, or the association is not there. So the mercy of Krishna manifests through devotees. So the association is not there. So the practitioner gets stuck in the notion that I am the soul. Now, I am the soul, then what is the sambandh? What is the relationship? Because Krishna has not manifested, then they either manifest it to everything, which is Brahman, or they will manifest to an aspect of Krishna, which is sometimes convoluted, right? Sometimes they become Mayavadis, sometimes they become Shunyavadis. So depending on their particular situation.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhu.
No, Hare Krishna, while you were talking about thinking about this, for the Atma Gyan people, maybe as Krishna said in Bhagavad Gita 10:11, out of compassion, within their heart, then he will arrange for them for a devotee to cross their path. Like he sent a devotee to meet, or somebody get a copy of Bhagavad Gita, by good fortune, then they come on the path of bhakti.
That's exactly what it is. That's how Krishna's mercy manifests. That he will send a devotee, or he will make an arrangement, like you said, a book or a deity or something. And then if the devotee is fortunate enough to grasp on that mercy, and then Krishna starts to reel him in. That now you can come to me.
I guess even in this section, we see Maitreya Muni was initially a impersonalist, and then he became a devotee by the association of Uddhava and Krishna's mercy. So,
True. He was never an impersonalist. He was a Jnana Mishra Bhakta. So he was a devotee, but also one that was more influenced by Gyan than Bhakti. And we saw that in Krishna's posture when he was speaking to Vidur and to Uddhav and Maitreya. So we discussed that there. But yes, it's possible Maitreya is speaking from personal realizations here. Okay, thank you. Wonderful discussion. We went a little bit over time. But,
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Radha.
Hare. What is Earth Pravarti? I was listening in one lecture and Prabhu mentioned that like as a Krishna devotee, we are Vaishnava and Allah, we do Earth Pravarti. I think doing devotional service, so we slowly remove all the unwanted contamination, like got this stage of Anarth Nivrati. So what is Earth Pravarti?
So the process of bhakti is that we remove our unwanted desires and we replace them with wanted desires. So the literal translation of artha is that which is useful, that which is valuable. Dharma, artha, kama, moksha. Artha is that which is valuable. Anartha is that which is not valuable. So initial stages is anartha nivritti is removing all unwanted things, material desires, lust, anger, envy. So that is anartha nivritti. But in devotion, we don't stop at that point. So when we remove the anarthas, we remove our nivrittis, then we replace it with pravrittis. So now, instead of us being attracted to material things, we're attached to spiritual things. Instead of us having strong greed for money, we have strong greed to serve Krishna. So that is what happens after we are nivrit of the anarthas. We start becoming imbued with the desirable qualities. Or as Maitreya said, that these desirable qualities, they start manifesting because they were always there. Because Maya can never change her swarup. So they were always there, but they start manifesting as the coverings get removed. So because they're, from our perspective, they're appearing for the first time, we notionally we say that now these qualities are appearing. The more accurate way would be, description would be that these qualities are reappearing. They were always there.
Okay, Prabhu. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Okay, we'll end here. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyeva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Anant Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Sai Gaur Premanande. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu.